What do we mean when we talk about academic English? Okay. Now the focus in this video is on vocabulary and vocabulary in academic English. But what is vocabulary in academic English? Okay. Is it about academic words? And if so, what are academic words? Well, 20 something years ago, a lady called Avril Coxhead, while doing a master's degree, conducted some research into exactly that question of what are academic words. And what Avril Coxhead did was she collected together some text, some journal articles from a range of different subject areas, and she studied them to see which words appeared most frequently within those texts, to try to work out what are the words that are used most often in academic contexts. Okay, and she made a list of like most common to least common, and she removed the most common 2,000 words in English. And this led her to the creation of a list, which she called the academic word list, and which she was able to divide up into categories of frequency, and which she was able to arrange around something called word families. So she was able to present in her master's dissertation a list of words and a kind of approach that teachers and students could take in order to kind of efficiently develop their vocabularies by focusing on words that are most likely to meet again and again in academic texts. And the idea is that if you learn all of the words in the academic word list and you learn them as families, then you will massively increase the coverage of text that you understand in any academic text in a relatively short time. Certainly relative, certainly compared to just only focusing on words by their frequency in general English use. Okay, I use the term word families there, and an example of a word family would be, let's say, you learn the word analyze. Well, words in the family of analyze would include analyst, the person who analyzes, analysis, which is the thing that they do, analytical and analytically, that's the adjectives and the adverbs. And so you see, like you only need to you only really need to get one meaning there of the word analysis, but there might be 5 or 6 words that you can learn around it by thinking about its family. Okay. So that is one approach to considering what are academic words. Create an academic word list, study an academic word list, and increase your vocabulary that way. And it's done very well for Avril Coxhead. You can see she is now a professor of applied linguistics in New Zealand, where she's from. And actually, her master's dissertation has been pretty influential in the field of English for academic purposes, and particularly in the publishing of materials in that subject area. So that's one approach. Another approach is to consider academic phrases, so phrases that we frequently meet in academic texts with a very specific academic purpose. And we're going to explore this a little bit more ourselves, but just as a helpful resource, I think, for all students in any kind of writing you do at university, is the Academic Phrase Bank, which you can find at phrasebank.manchester.ac.uk. It's a nice, simple, free website where a team of researchers from Manchester and a few other places gather together examples of language that can be used for like referring to other writers, introducing topics, reporting results, being critical, drawing conclusions, anything that you might have to do in academic writing. There are helpful phrases that you could use in doing this. Okay, so nice resource to start with. But I think also everyone, when they start a degree program, probably wants to expand their vocabulary and develop their language so that they can complete their studies more effectively and to find themselves speaking the same language as the people who are teaching them and studying with them. And I think that's kind of the purpose of this video, to help you to start not just to use helpful resources like this, but to start developing your own vocabulary on these principles, but based on things that you encounter yourself. So, I first ran this workshop in the week starting the 31st of October. And if you look at the picture on your left, on the left of the screen, is there a word that springs to mind? Hopefully that word is Halloween. So this is me, my daughter and her friend, just before we went out trick-or-treating at Halloween this year. My question for you is this: is Halloween an academic word? I think most people's, their first reaction would be, not really. I don't see anything academic about Halloween. And I would ask, well, does it depend on where we use that word? So when we're in our house talking about, getting excited about going into the streets and scaring people and collecting sweets, doesn't seem particularly academic use of the word Halloween. But how about if I'm in the Learning Resource Centre at the University of Hertfordshire and I'm talking to some students about Halloween as a kind of cultural practice? That's a university, that's an academic context. Does that make it academic? Perhaps it does. And I think perhaps what we say about Halloween might determine whether we're using it academically or not. Take these examples. Halloween is amazing. Halloween is ridiculous. Halloween is annoying. Does this seem academic to you? How about Halloween is unchristian? Halloween is big business. Halloween is an industry. Halloween is a ritual. Now, you might find that as I was going through that list, you started to change your mind about what felt academic and what didn't. And that once we got to saying Halloween is an industry or Halloween is a ritual, we could maybe imagine a subject area, an academic context, in which this might be something we say or read and go further with. But notice that's because we're starting to say something interesting about it, that is more than just an opinion or a feeling or a kind of religious or moral judgment on it. Okay. And that we are maybe being precise about it in a way that might be interesting to an academic audience. Let's take that a little bit further. Consider this. Okay. Our Halloween traditions are largely traceable to the Celtic day of Samhain, which marked the start of the new year. Okay. Is that academic? It's taken from an academic text. It's taken from a journal which explores the history of Halloween. So, I think that's academic. How about this? In Halloween rituals, non-family members provide gifts to masked and anonymous children who pose a vague menace. Again, actually comes from an academic text. I would say it's academic. How about this? The study of Halloween began as a simple investigation of the solicitation, acquisition, and consumption of candies by children, but soon became an investigation of the mysteries of a rich and evolving social ritual involving children, adults, and community. Okay. Now, to me, this definitely looks academic. It's come from an academic journal, even though it contains at least one word that I think I feel like it's not a particularly technical word or an academic word. I wonder if you can choose one word in this paragraph that doesn't look academic to you. You can pause the video if you like. Which would it be? I would choose the word candies. I might replace it with confectionery, okay? Because solicitation, acquisition, and consumption all seem like quite long words. Candy. However, point I want to make here is the vocabulary you see is absolutely fine, absolutely acceptable in an academic text, because it's doing a job of explaining in a quite concise way with lots of detail what has happened to Halloween and the study of Halloween over time. Okay, and that suggests to me that individual words, we don't need to spend a lot of time thinking about whether or not individual words are academic. If we meet them in our studies, we should take them seriously, and we should consider what they mean and whether or not we would benefit from learning them. Okay. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce this idea of semantic fields in vocabulary. And a kind of simple way of talking about semantic fields is that they're topics, vocabulary topics that we meet in any kind of reading or listening that we do at university. And I'll work through an example with you. Okay, so here is a text from a journal of folklore. And because the text is quite small, I've divided the two paragraphs up, and on the next slide I'll show you one paragraph. And I'd just like you to take a moment to read it. And I'm going to show you some colours. Okay, so notice that I've highlighted some words in different colours. I'd like you to consider what the yellow words have in common, what the green words have in common, what the light blue words have in common, and what the pink words have in common. Okay. And after you've had some time to think, I'll give you my answer, right? So the yellow words, this is the vocabulary topic here, the semantic field is Halloween. When we talk about Halloween, we'll often talk about skeletons, costumes, witches, scary things, ghosts. Jack-o'-lanterns are those kind of pumpkins with candles inside, like carved so that they look like faces. But yeah, the semantic field here is Halloween. And it may be that this is the only text we ever read about Halloween. And all we need to do when we're reading is recognize some of this is Halloween vocabulary. We might not need it ourselves in the future. But look at the other colours. Okay, the light blue, rumours, verbal lore. Okay, this is the vocabulary of kind of storytelling and oral storytelling. Okay, lore, you might have seen lore before in a term like folklore, which is like the verbal, the kind of the stories of people and cultures, stories that people tell. The green vocabulary is kind of the language of explaining and describing a concept. We say it's a holiday marked by something. It includes this, such as. X is a very strong component of Halloween. And at this point, I think you might start to notice, okay, whatever you're studying, you'll probably see those words again in your field of study, right? Or you're probably not going to read anything else about Halloween as a university student, but you'll probably see phrases like this is marked by that, by this feature. These features include, I don't know why my phone is ringing like that. yeah, these features include, we use such as to give examples. This feature is a very strong component of this thing. Across many subject areas, we can probably find examples of that language. And perhaps the same in the words in pink, which are related to actually the kind of research and data on whether or something can be proven, corroborated, whether something is believable or not, convincing or not. So with any text that you read, you'll see that there are multiple topics going on, multiple groups of vocabulary that we meet, and they interact to make to tell us a story or to explain something, to create an argument. Some of the language we might never see again, but others, if we recognize, oh, this is all the language of research, then we're university students, we'll probably see that again. So therefore, if we don't understand it now, it's a good idea to look it up. A word like jack-o'-lantern, you probably haven't seen that before, but if you know, oh, this is something to do with Halloween, it's probably enough for now. You probably didn't need to look that up in a dictionary, and you don't need to learn it for the future. But I think a very strong component of is something that if you're not sure what it means, it might be worth checking because you're likely to meet it again. And one day you might use it yourself in your own writing. Okay. Same thing with the second paragraph. Please feel free to pause the video, take some time to read this, maybe see if you can identify other topics and groups of vocabulary, and maybe take some time to consider what the different colours here might mean. What you see is in light blue. I'm continuing to highlight words relating to storytelling, verbal storytelling, fairy tales, folklore. The kind of the pink again continues to relate to research, ethnographic studies, ethnographic data. Collectania was a term that I had never seen before I read this article, but I recognise that it is related to research, and so therefore it might be interesting for me to explore what that is. And if you do, any of you studying a subject that involves qualitative research, that's probably most people at the University of Hertfordshire, it's useful to know what these words might mean. The dark pink words you might kind of notice straight, I guess these are purple words. Edna Bart's Witches, Pumpkins and Grinning Ghosts, Catherine Briggs' work, Trevor Owens. You'll notice these are names of people and books. And of course, we often see names of people and books in academic writing. We often see them in the bibliography only, and we only see surnames in the main body of a text. So if someone is using a full name, they're trying to tell us something, and we should pay attention to that. But it should be standard for us to be able to recognize when names and book titles are being used in our reading. And finally, this stuff about most books on Halloween seem to be children's books. They fail to provide relevant data. Something is not concerned with the American situation. This is all the language of establishing a gap in some research, which is very common actually. It's about it's the language that we use to show that something is not enough, and the work that has previously been done in a field is not enough for us. Okay, so those are semantic fields, and I've introduced them here because I think anything you're reading, anything you're trying to make sense of, if you break it down into topics and try to identify which vocabulary belongs to which semantic field, it can also help you to decide what to check in a dictionary and what to learn for yourself. Yeah? You're basically asking, what vocabulary here will I meet again, and what will I need? And in the next session, we'll talk a little bit more about what we need to do to learn that vocabulary by focusing on meaning, form, and use. Meaning, form, and use. That's to come. Any questions about this video, you're very welcome to ask via email. I'm Mark. Please address me as Mark, and you can write to me at m.holloway3@hearts.ac.uk. Thank you very much.